So by, let's say, profession, I'm a collector, I'm a collection specialist, and by, I will say, learning aspirations, I'm a developing leader. That's how I will define myself. So today's topic is dispute management. So dispute management in cash collection is a formalized approach to process and recover collections, past debts, and resolve customer invoice disputes. When we talk about dispute management, primarily, we look into all those areas which basically affect the cash collection process itself, and whereby we as our own organization are supposed to deal with those issues which may need our attention, in some cases before invoice submission, and in some cases after your client comes up with the idea that something is not right with your invoice. So that is how it works. If this process is not working well in your organization, definitely you will see the impact in huge debts. You will see the impact in your DSOs, which will be increasing, and you need to bring them down. So you need to go into the root causes of dispute management. So School 101, you have a problem, you go for the root cause, and then you figure it out how to deal with it. Today, we are going to talk about why dispute management is very important for cash collections, our team members. What are the main barriers for dispute management and cash collections? So we'll look into that part, and how to handle disputes. That is also going to be a prime, let's say, topic for today, that how we can resolve the disputes, how we can handle them technically, and impact of disputes on the total order to cash process. So we'll go back into the order to cash process. If you joined my last session, we went through the cycle itself. So we'll go back to that cycle and we'll see how does the disputes impact this order to cash cycle. And we'll also look into the very important factor of disputes and relationship management. So the secret of any successful business, in my opinion, lies in how to handle the customer complaints, the client complaints and discrepancies that they highlight in your invoicing, in your purchase order management, or billing documents, etc., etc. With dispute management, you can effectively view how you can manage and strategize your payments, your credits, your incorrect invoices and disputes eventually, to help yourself with processing the invoices through the customer approve till pay cycle. So that is the transparency you're looking for when you look at the dispute management. So that's all in all the coverage we will pass through in today's session. So you are free to come up with your questions in the Q&A session. I will try to come back to you right after the session, but if we are running out of the time, I'll definitely try to get back to all of you as much as I can and as quickly as I can. So let's move on. And I will start with a quote from Thomas Crum. The quality of our lives depends not on whether or not we are having conflicts, but on how we respond to them. So basically, we all have issues. We all have quality issues with our invoicing, with our processes, but how we manage that matters the most. So how we look at it and how we respond to the conflicts, how we respond to our disputes, that matters the most. So let's see how we can respond to the disputes. Okie dokie. Why dispute management is important? With proper dispute management, collectors can accelerate dispute resolution and achieve receivable and collections in time. And besides that, businesses can reduce significantly their debts, their old debts. When we look into the reasons, there are certain examples I would like to share here. For example, from construction work. So I would like to highlight here from a construction work point of view that how we can improve disputes. So first of all, what kind of disputes we can have when we look at the construction's business itself. So I don't know how many of you are part of the civil works and construction and the labor management in that. There are basically two types of, let's say, disputes in these kind of businesses. One is the basic dispute of onshore labor. And when I talk about onshore labor or onshore, let's say, materials, it employs on all of the services, all of the people engagement, all of the equipment that you purchase locally, that you are procuring locally. So there are specific type of disputes when we look into the local distribution of products, local distribution of services. So what could be local distribution issues? This definitely can be on the quality of the equipment that you are providing. And when I talk about equipment, I'm talking about the civil works related equipment that is provided over there. It could be ladders, it could be cables, it could be other materials that are part of the civil work and the construction itself. And this also implies on the completion of fair services for your client. So if your client is not happy with the services provided, eventually it's a possibility that your client will not approve the invoices, even though you have completed the services. So you have completed the services, you have tick marked everything on the acceptance document, on the delivery note, yet customer is not passing through your invoices because probably you didn't leave the place clean. So basic ethics are also very important. When you finish a task, you need to make sure you leave it in a situation, you leave it in a position that it is acceptable for your client and it is fair enough to leave it in a way that client is happy to accept that. That is the onshore or the services part or the local material part. There is often a complaint about the quality of the local material that has been used. If that is the problem, then you need to take the matters to your procurement for a root cause analysis and looking for a long-term resolution. When we look at onshore issues, we primarily look into two types of areas. One is that we look into a short-term resolution, that how we can quickly resolve. It's about cleaning, it's about fixing some cables, so some tie wraps or something like that. That's a quick fix. You can do that, and then you can ask for monies. On the other hand, it could employ that you're regularly getting a specific issue, probably about the quality, probably about the availability and the timeline of the delivery. In those cases, you must discuss with your procurement team for a long-term solution. I can give you an example of an indicator. For example, often your customer or your client is coming back with a question that, hey, this equipment was delivered with delay, or this services were completed with delay, so I'm going to employ some penalties. If you're getting once or twice these penalties, then definitely you have some homework to do, which means you have to go back to your procurement team and look into how we are employing these services and local equipment so that we can expedite from the source and the origin of this whole matter, instead of just fixing and repairing off and on. So that's the part of the onshore services or onshore, I will say, materials that are procured locally. When we talk about constructions, it's very rare that we get offshore equipment unless it is highly sophisticated equipment for, let's say, for telecommunication, unless if it's highly sophisticated equipment for electricity and power. In those cases, the equipment will come from offshore, and then there could be disputes or issues in terms of relationship with the customer when it comes to, let's say, delivery. So we are talking about the shipments. We are talking about when the shipments are arriving on your shores, how those are managed and how the taxations are working. This is all customs, etc. These can be your disputes with your customers when you get your equipment on shore. There's also a possibility that after you receive them, then you have issues with the customer on the delivery in their delivery places, their warehouses, or places they would like to install the sites where they are going to develop those constructions. So these kind of issues, the delivery timeline and the quality of the material when it is reaching, and then some cases they make tests as well. So if the testing is properly done or not, all of these milestones are important even before invoice is created and submitted to your customer. So in that particular timeline, anything can happen, and those areas must be looked into when it is reflected back from the customer stating that this invoice cannot be paid. Now, let's move on to the services part. And I already highlighted in the construction work, the services. Services can be highly sophisticated services as well when it comes to some of the work that is, let's say, very, very let's say hard work when it comes to and dangerous work as well. So depending on the nature of the services, your disputes can vary. So depending, for example, if you're looking at the services that are provided to a very specific and sophisticated equipment, then that also require a very healthy degree of engagement and care when it comes to the customer deliverables. So if those deliverables are not sophisticatedly delivered to your customer, then you're looking for a dispute with them. So this kind of disputes can come over softwares. Now, when it comes to the softwares, there are multiple operative dimensions how you can deliver those softwares. And when you deliver those softwares, those options can be source of dispute as well. So for example, a CD is being imported in a certain country, then there are very specific custom rules and laws applicable on them. And there are, even if it's just a CD, it is coming with a software. So you must treat it as an equipment, and all the airway bills, bill of lading, etc., whatever is employing must be accompanying the invoice so that your customer can pay in line with the legal requirement of that particular country. So that is something we need to be very careful. And often I've seen people not being that mindful about this software part, and then eventually when the disputes pop up, we look into troubles for ourselves. Shipment parts, there are multiple factors. It depends on Incoterms that you have set up with your customers. So depending on the Incoterms, it's then decided or defined that who is going to be the one paying for those shipment costs. So it's possible that customer can employ some penalties on you when you deliver certain equipment, and they ask you that you must be paying the shipment charges. So you need to be very careful with your Incoterms, the selection of Incoterms in line with the contract that you have signed with your customer or client, and accordingly send the invoice which should reflect the right Incoterms, so that you don't end up in penalties when the customer is deciding and defining your payments eventually. With this, I will move on to the next part, where we are going to look at some of the barriers that we have dispute management in collection. So when we talk about business-to-business collections, there are multiple barriers that seize, stop, and push back our cash collections effort. And that is something very important to consider when you are looking at collections. So first and foremost, and I think this is I will say the basic root cause of many failures in cash collection and many disruptions in your relationship management with your customers, that is lack of proper strategy for your recoveries, for your, let's say, dispute. So some of us are not really even ready for the disputes. So we have been in a business with a customer or a client, and we are running this business for years and years and years. Nothing happened. And all of a sudden a dispute came and everything is vanished. We are running into relationship troubles with our customers. We are running into issues with how to handle it now. We're running back to our suppliers. We're running back to the procurement. We don't know where to go. We are escalating within our teams, and then eventually ending up in a very sore situation for all the parties concerned and engaged. So a very proper strategy is very important for any business to make sure that how we are going to recover our past dues. And it will make a difference if you're ready for that. And that's how we always say that you need to build your muscles before you need them. And this employs exactly here. You need to develop your strategy before you need it, because then you will be reactive. And in this case, if you develop it for yourself, you are proactive, and you need to be proactive when it comes to the cash collection. We spoke in a very detailed way in the last discussion that we had, how we can encourage our collectors to be proactive. Similarly, strategy definition is very important. So What do you need to define when it comes to defining a strategy for yourself for dispute resolution? First thing is very important, that you need to have a proper responsibility metrics within your organization, which means that if in a case a customer comes back to you on a specific, let's say, issue, you should know who within your organization is going to take on that. So for example, if my client comes back with a query on invoice values, it's very common. So invoice values are not correct, and the client comes back and says, hey, your invoice values are not correct or are not in line with the purchase order that we have exchanged. So there's something wrong. So who should I turn to when I engage in this kind of situation, or when I have to face this kind of problem? That is very important for me to define within my organization who is going to fix this. Is it going to be my finance organization? Is it going to be my logistics organization, or XYZ, whatever we need to define, or maybe it's going to be the collections organization who is going to fix it. So depending on your organization setup, you need to figure it out. Who is going to deal with this issue or this type of issues? So it's not very, let's say, necessary that you have to define, these are the issues, but a broad strategy will work fine for you. And then you can go into the details if needed. Similarly, if in a case you get a question, or you get a problem, or you get an issue, or you get a conflict with your client on the deliverables, then who is going to deal with it in your organization? So this kind of ideas should be there in your definitions, where you clearly define that deliveries, team X will take care of, services, team Y will take care of. In a case of the invoice face value issues, team ABC will take care of. So you need to define the responsibilities, who is going to take care of what when you really need it. Similarly, when you have this responsibility metrics defined, you also have to define a handshake mechanism. So when this issue will come, at point A, Mr. X will do that. At point B, Mr. Y will take care of it. And at point C, Mr. K will do that. So there we define who exactly is going to do where, the handshakes. This is very important. And also, you also need to identify how you will manage the governance bit of it. So how you will communicate with each other when this kind of issue will come. We'll talk about this in more detail, but just to give you a high level visibility on what should be your strategy when there is nothing for you in disputes. You need to have a dispute management strategy in place for your organization, a contingency in a case if you have to face that. That was the very first area. Then the second part is manual tasks. So at the moment, if I have to look at the organizations, they have so many filters, they have so many searches for each customer manually. And this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest bottleneck for many organizations. So having drawing deductions from those disputes, let's say, and collectors inspect and validate all of these penalties or taxes deducted from the invoices, that's very, very manual. And we're talking about hundreds and in some cases, thousands of invoices. So we need to look into these manual tasks and how we can automate them. No need of any very fancy software. You can build something very simple in Microsoft Excel. You can build a macro. If you see that your team is repeating a task over and over again, develop a short macro, and it's very easy. And I mean, you can learn it yourself and you can develop it for your team, then how I can fix these issues. And if not, you can ask somebody expert to help you with that kind of macro, which can eventually reduce those manual tasks. So manual tasks definitely is a pain point. Then we talk about the excesses. Several dispute resolutions need multiple organizations to deal with. Let's say your warehouse team, let's say your sales team, for example. So all of these people get involved. And in most of the cases, they have very limited access to perform certain set of tasks. And that actually is kind of a bottleneck for your dispute management. So the access manually is provided normally, and it is via emails or something like that, and it can be cumbersome. So these limited accesses can be a problem. It will increase the time to resolve. And that is where we are talking about the DSO, because the clock is ticking and your invoices are getting more and more aged, and that is a problem. And then let's have a look at how to handle the disputes, and that's, I think, the most interesting part of dispute management. When I'm asked generally the question how to handle the disputes, I have a very interesting image that I will share with you, and that image is Marvel's The Avengers. Now, that sounds a bit funny, that what does this have to do with the dispute management? In my opinion, it has a lot to do with that. So this, basically the image that you see, Marvel's Avengers, they are featuring whom? They're featuring Iron Man, they're featuring Captain America, you can see the Hulk as well, Thor. And it's not just an inspiring for the comic fans, but there's a huge lesson about teamwork you might not have paid attention to. And here comes the concept of one is better than one. So which means that this is a lesson, meaning that one team is better than one person. And that's basically the conceptual lesson that I get from the Avengers. So a group of 5 can certainly accomplish more than a person alone, and we all know that. It's very straightforward fact as well. But when those 5 people work together, they can make the magic happen. But pull them out alone and then see the magic, it will fall apart. So basically, I'm kind of pulling all these 5 together, and that's the hard part. Sorry, that's the hardest part, to bring all these people, 5 people together and make the magic happen. That's something really we need to accomplish in our organizations, to bring sales, warehousing team, maybe a logistics or logistics service provider, LSPs, collections team, your finance organization, and then work together on the issues that you have. If you can't do that, you will continue to have disputes staying with your organization for a long time, and your organizations are not the right hosts for disputes. We all know that. So that was one example that I wanted to share with you. But when we talk about dispute resolution, how to resolve the disputes, I will split it into 3 parts. First is dispute case creation. So basically, it can be a creation of disputes. It can be manually, it can be with a system or software or whatsoever. What we have to do here is that we need to register a dispute. We need to create a dispute. And then there ideally should be a workflow a functionality or capability. What is a workflow capability? So the moment a dispute is raised, and we have so many softwares in the market, you can use any of them, and I will not name any just to avoid any marketing over here, but there are so many. It's very easy to choose, not very hard. There are 5, 6 very renowned, let's say, organizations selling these very good softwares. So workflow functionality means that you are able to orchestrate the whole process itself, from raising this till it is solved, in a way that things are monitored centrally and they pass through a very sophisticated cycle till the time they are resolved. And this workflow knows where to do what. So in a case, if it is not resolved within a certain specific time, then what to do next, etc., etc. And update of key fields on dispute creation. So this is very important, that when you create a dispute, you must highlight all the key areas in dispute itself. So all the details that you know must be filled into that dispute, to make sure whoever is on the receiving end of it should be easily able to identify what's that dispute. That was the case creation itself, or I will say dispute creation. Then comes the processing of dispute case. That is investigation and updating dispute case, which means that you continuously follow up with the dispute resolver, and you pass through the whole process of getting feedback as well, that what really the problem is. It's possible that the dispute is not valid at all. So this probing, I always advocate to the collectors, 5 whys of yourself, why, at least 5 times ask why it is like this, why we couldn't fix it, why we have a wrong invoice price, why we have a PO mismatch, etc., etc. And assignment of the disputes to other team member, and that's where you pick up the right person within your team who's going to fix it. Maybe it's the warehouse team, it's the sales guys, depends. Once you're done with that, then the automatic flow will pass it through the case, and then it will resolve it for you. So resolution can turn into two situations. One, you go for collection from your customer. You provided all the relevant information to your customers, and then you ask for the monies, and customer will pay you. However, it's possible that that right of dispute is there for you waiting. So it was not a correct invoice, or you didn't finish the deliveries, or something like that. Services were not provided, or the quality was not there, etc., etc. Eventually, you have to write it off. So that can be a logical conclusion of one dispute on your balance sheet. So when we look at these parts, then it naturally brings your thoughts around the role and responsibility that we spoke about. So who is going to do what? That is very important for you to understand. So let's go into more details of who is supposed to do what. So we have a coordinator role, we have a processor role, and then we have a person responsible as well. Coordinators normally are the collectors. So coordinating the dispute processing, which means raising the dispute and then passing it through all the process and feeding the information from multiple sources, and that this is the responsibility of a cash collections organization or a coordinator. You can call it any way. I mean, in some organizations, I've seen that these dispute coordinations are managed by the logistic organization. So it depends on how your organization is set up. So I'll not tag it as finance, I'll not tag it as logistics, but I'll put it as coordinator. Coordination of dispute cases, acting as a contact for internal reporting for the dispute cases as well. So monitoring of the disputes and reporting itself. So which means that if you're working on a group of customers, you must constantly highlight to the sales team that, guys, you are making sales, but I'm not able to get the monies because of these 5-6 issues. You can share high value issues with those sales teams, and they will obviously understand and appreciate that they need to support you as a dispute, let's say, processor. And then assigning the responsibility to the right people. So it's also very important to understand what exactly is the problem. And when you clearly understand what's the problem, then it's also very important to understand within your organization who is the right person to deal with that. So these few steps are supposed to be done by this coordinator. I will say more than 90% of the organizations have coordinator role with collectors. So collectors are the one who are taking this lead of coordination. So let's keep an eye on this one. This is our role probably. Sorry. Processor. When we talk about the processor is person who is assigned by the coordinator to resolve this dispute. And the processor his job is to make sure that this is sorted. May it be the delivery, may it be the services, or whatsoever. And then there's a person responsible, and that person responsible is very important for us to have. This person is responsible for helping you when you cannot deal with the issues in a normal course of action, or BAU, business as usual. This is normally an escalation point. So in a case the things won't work on this level, where else I can go and ask for support? These persons responsible can be horizontally on top of these processors, or they can also be vertically working together with them. Their job is to make sure that they take care of any escalation that comes to their desk and help with the escalation. When I speak about the governance bit, this is very important to have these layers in your organizations set up as a part of your strategy to resolve the disputes. With this, we'll move on to the questions session. And we have a question on the screen. The question states, who is responsible to resolve the disputes? And if you're following me, you should be easily able to understand these questions. I'm hoping that you're able to see on your screen these questions. And I will, go back to the questions section. I will give you a couple of minutes to look at these questions and answer them. Who is responsible to resolve the dispute? We had a look on the coordinator role. We had a look on the processor role. We had a look on the person responsible as well. And we had a look on the client as well. So who eventually is responsible to resolve the disputes? Okie dokie. There are some answers coming in. Very good. So B is one answer. Very good. I will bring it here so that I can see the answers. Very good. Let them come. I am curious. What else do you have in your mind? Very good. There is another. D as an answer. Good. So the D is person responsible. Very good. Let them come. Another one. D. Very good. Very good. Let them come. I'm happy to see the answers. So I see that you're following me. Okay, another one. B, Yonita. Good. Very, very good. I see the answers coming in. Let them come. If you recall, and I'll go back and I will show you what is the right answer exactly from the slide that we had a look on. Okay, there's one more. B. B, B, B. Very good. Okie dokie. Let me go back and show you where exactly you are. Thank you very much for your answers. I'm very happy and excited to see that you have been closely following and monitoring what I was explaining. So we have a coordinator role, we have a processor role, and we have a person responsible. Person responsible is the one who is responsible to get it sorted. So it is his domain. So we are talking about accountability and responsibility. And the question mainly was around the responsibility itself. So the person responsible is the one who is responsible to eventually make sure that all the disputes which are open for a specific case, for a specific customer, for a specific group of customers, those are addressed and resolved timely. So that was one part of it. So I will move on in the interest of time now to the next bit of it, and that is analysis of disputes. And that's also a very interesting area, because as a collection specialist, I need to understand, as a collector, as a finance expert, I need to understand what exactly is there that I need to sort out. If you don't know what, then you won't know how. So first you need to know what, and this is the what. So when we look at the what part, there are specific areas. For example, proof of delivery required. Customer comes back to you asking you, okay, you're claiming that you have delivered a certain, let's say, material, but we don't have the delivery. So do you have the proof of delivery to show me? When we talk about proof of delivery, it also could be an acceptance certificate, let's say for a service that you have completed. So when we talk about these kind of things, I would recommend in those cases, if you're getting this kind of issue very frequently, then it's best that you align with your people who are submitting invoices to your clients to make sure that they have a checklist before they go for the invoice submission to the customer. Now, it doesn't matter how you submit. It can be electronically, it can be through a portal, it can be a old-fashioned mailing and all that. But they must make sure that there's a checklist they are marking, that I have completed marking all these things, and whatever I am supposed to submit in the light of the contract with this customer, I am attaching with this invoice. If the invoice is accompanied with all those evidences, there is a very, very slim chance that you will get a dispute. So that's one of the tips I will share with you guys here, that you can make a checklist before the invoice is submitted. Wrong goods shipped. So you need to look into not just your LSP, your logistics service provider, but also in your factory, what kind of shipment that you have sent, why it was sent wrongly. Damaged goods. Now, this is also an important, let's say, concern that can come from the customer. And then that can end up in a penalty as well if you have submitted or shared damaged goods with your client. Customer returned, and the customer returned for any reason. Now, this could be tricky, that why customers returning. And when this kind of error comes back to you, that they just return back your product, then you have to insist on asking for that why question, why they returned it. And unless you are very clear that why this refund or return was done by the customer, keep asking and insist for a clear answer. Invoicing errors. Now, customer has accepted your invoice based on the annexes that we looked at in the checklist, but you made an error on the face of the invoice. So the invoicing errors could be you put up wrong taxes, you put up wrong values. There was differences, even in some cases, very marginal value differences, which can end up in a situation for you where your balance and the customer balance is not matching at all, and POs are getting exhausted faster. So in those cases, customer invoicing errors can be a blockage for your payments. And discount not applied. Yeah, if you make a commitment to your customer, then make sure that you give them the adequate advance discount that you promised with them. And if in a case by any mistake you could not, then immediately offer them a credit note so that they can utilize it upon their convenience for the next payment run. When we talk about the disputes, then there is also very important I will say, concern that how does this impact our overall order to cash process? So when we look at the order to cash process, there are certain, I will say, factors. First of all, we need to see what we look into when we talk about the order to cash process itself. What are the components of that? First is order placement. Now, it's a very high level process, by the way, so don't confuse it with your detailed swim lanes and diagrams that you have in your organization, which demonstrate the O2C process. I've kept it a very generic and a high level view. Order placement management, how you are placing the orders, how you are engaging with your customer and pulling them into the tool, how you're replicating those orders from the customer directly into your systems. That is one part of it. Then credit management bit of it, how you manage the credits for your customers. So how do you look at their ratings globally or locally? How do you look at their profiles and their credibility to pay you the monies? So there are so many factors, and there's so many, I would say, institutions helping us with these, from Moody's, et cetera, order fulfillment, which is basically preparation of your order, and in some cases, let's say, delivery as well. So you prepare the order and then you deliver, and after that, customer billing comes. Customer billing, or generally as we say, it's invoicing. So invoicing, and after that, payment collections. But the story is not stopped here. We need to reconcile our ledgers, and that's the ledger management. So payment collection, we all know that, and I'll not go into the detail of that. I would like to highlight what is cash reconciliation and ledger management. When we talk about the cash reconciliation, we are talking about the balances of cash that you have received against the invoices that you have submitted, how much you have cleared, and what customer still owes you. So that should be telling, matching. So whatever is your account receivable should be your customer's account payable. That's the very basic and requirements of your auditors as well. Then it comes down to the ledger management. When it comes to the ledger management, I recommend people to keep your ledgers very clean. How can we keep our ledgers clean? Because sometimes this also ends up in long reconciliation and painful journey of handling this kind of disputes with the customer when they say, we have already paid this invoice. So that ledger management or clean and tidy ledgers help you to avoid this kind of situation where your customers can come up and say, hey, I've already paid it back in 2015, and you're asking me for the invoice now. If you keep cleaning your balances, for example, clearly marking the invoices which were identified by your customer that I'm paying these invoices with the cash and clearing them from the system. If there are very small leftovers, clean them, get them cleared with in line with your local policies. Don't keep, $50 and this kind of small values, $5, $4 on your balances, because these line items are actually making everything messy for you. And it's hard for you to track. Each of the invoice needs attention from you. And probably you'll run out of bandwidth if you have thousands of these $0.2 values. So make sure that you clean every single, let's say, a cash transaction with the invoice in a way that there is no leftover. And if there is already, clean it up. Speak with your finance team and get it off your balance sheet. This will be very, very long-term, I will say, good for your balance sheet. So let's go a step further into this order to cash process. And when we look at the processing itself, we have complexities of orders, we have volumes, we have seasonality, and we have manual touch points. These are kind of areas that I will be careful when I'm placing these orders, because then eventually, because of the order complexity, it's possible that I might not be able to match my invoice with the customer PO. And some customers or clients prefer to match the PO with the invoice. Of course, they have to exhaust their purchase orders in their budgets. So in those cases, when you have a complex order process, it can end up in getting that kind of disputes for you. The volumes, they of course employ. So depending on the volumes, there are chances of errors as well. In some cases, you do not submit all of the invoices, but one order, one invoice. And this kind of mechanism can help you. However, you need to have a very, very strict check on that to make sure that there is nothing going out of the legal boundaries. When we talk about the order fulfillment, which covers the delivery, bill of lading, access limitations and dependence as well. So it is, I mean, the requirement of certain custom documents is very important. We should understand that is real, which means that some custom documents you need to submit to your client in real. Whatever you received, original documents should go. Otherwise, they cannot file their tax. So it is important to take very good care of airway bills, bill of ladings, which probably in some of the cases cannot be duplicated. So you can run into trouble if you don't carefully submit these documentations to the customer. Then billing itself. Billing, when we talk about it, it's very important that there are multiple documents. So for example, for one order, you are creating 10,000 invoices, your client can get frustrated and they can say, hey, come on, stop it. We don't want this many invoices for us. Then we talk about the cash collections, the impacted cash flow, and lagging account details. That's very important. You need to keep the balances tidy and have all the relevant details that you need for your cash collections. Payment processing, cash application, lockbox delays, and inability to auto match. That can lead to a situation where you end up with disputes with your customers. And then we have some exceptions as well, and analytics. I'll not go into that detail, but end-to-end, we look at order to cash process. Each one of the touch points can be a reason for your disputes. So it's not just the invoicing and afterwards that you need to be mindful about, but it's also about before that, whatever is happening, you need to be very careful with each one of the categories and steps that you are engaged in, or maybe not. Most of the cases, collections organizations are not engaged on those levels. So in those cases, you need to have a very good intelligence and a keen eye on all of these matters, where you can end up in understanding them and supporting maybe your organization, having your collections experience reflecting on your order to cash. So you can be value addition for your organization's order to cash if you're managing collections in a way that you're archiving and maintaining a repository of your lessons learned. I'll move on further. And if you recall the process, overall process, I'm going a little bit more into the detail of the whole process, that how pre-sale activities, inquiries are being done, then the ordering is done. And we just discussed this whole process. So again, the billing itself is at the very, very end of the whole scene. So basically order fulfillment, processing, and pre-sale activities, they impact your dispute. So do not funnel yourself only onto the billing, that, okay, my invoicing is not right and everything is wrong. But no, you need to go into the detail of all of those root causes which actually created an error for your invoice. So there's a high probability you're looking at the wrong end of the telescope if you're just focusing on the invoice. So you need to look at the bigger picture and to think bigger if you really want to get your disputes sorted in a timely fashion. Okie dokie. I'll not go into the detail of the process of cash collections that we discussed already. I would directly move on to some comprehensions of customer behaviors that I believe is important for us to understand, because it is possible that one of the customer behavior can be reflected by mistake as an error, and you can mix it up with your dispute management. So how could it be? Payment runs. Certain customers or clients may have a specific payment run, let's say every 1 day a week. It's possible twice a month, so they have some dates. Do not mix up this with your payment terms on the invoice, and do not consider your logistic organization wrong in terms of setting those payment terms if your customer is not able to pay on exactly the date when it was paid. So payment runs, you need to keep a good eye on that how is your client restricted to pay you. It's possible legally they cannot pay you in a certain time, so you need to be careful with that and mix and match that with your invoicing. Maybe you can reverse factor that into your invoice creation. Payment methods, if they are not flexible, that can also create problem. And if somebody is following the old-fashioned check system, then forget it. That's going to be a problem. Then there are some customers who pick up small nitty-gritties and go for your disputes. In those cases, you need to sit down with your customers and put down a boundary that what is dispute and what is not, so that you don't end up in multiple disputes for each of the invoices. System challenges, in some cases, system handshakes create a lot of problem for you. For example, if your system has to engage with the customer client system for invoice submission, that can be a big problem for you. Financial crisis, administrative issues, do not mix them with the disputes. Those can be a situation of a certain customer. It is not dispute. And then dependencies, which are with the customers, those are not disputes. So if the customer cannot pay you in a specific currency, if a customer cannot pay you because that customer don't have the enough cash flow to support their payables, that doesn't mean it's a dispute. So we need to split the disputes from the customer behavior and issues and not mix them with internal disputes. Anything that is raised by the customer is for the reason that you and your organization has created for them, and you need to sort it out. That is technically and specifically a dispute. I will share yet another quote: "Don't find a fault, find a remedy." And it's my favorite, Henry Ford. I think it's one of the best quotes, I would say, and it does not only employ on the business but also in the general life as well. But anyways, there are specific types of disputes that I would walk you through now quickly. Invoice values. If you recall my last session, we discussed in more detail about these disputes as well. And format of the invoice, so maybe some language specific details, or probably some of the data explained over there, bank details or whatsoever. Delivery, completion, so we discussed about it. That is very important to understand. We have completed the deliveries. Service completion as well, but it's more or less the same thing. Yeah, and with this, dispute resolution in contracts, how you can look at that. How can contracts can help you with fixing certain disputes at certain point of time? So acceptances. So you might have, let's say, deemed acceptance clauses in your contracts with the customer, which means that even if customer did not sign a letter or document with you, they are obliged after a certain point of time to give you an acceptance. Document submission, you can agree in the contracts that which days we will submit documents, which format, which checklist we will attach with the invoices. All those can be documented in your contracts, and then there's a legal liability. And reconciliations and date timelines. So all the reconciliation that run between you and maybe the third parties and your client, those must be time bound, and that time must be defined in the contract. So the better contracts you have, lesser chances of conflicts you will have, because you will have an evidence that, hey, we agreed and I'm providing you this information. So instead of staying in the fantasies, it must be documented. That is eventually beneficial for both organizations. I will come down to my next question quickly. And that question is, I have a dispute with my customer. My first course of action would be to do what? Go to court. I will take it as an out-of-court settlement, contact person or persons responsible, or wait for the dispute resolution committee for decisions. Now, this is also an interesting question. What will be your course of action? So let's look, and answers are coming in quickly. C, very good. C, 3 C's. Let them coming. I see the answers. Very good. Carol, you neither. And now this time it was very fast. The questions are answered very fast. And I must say, all of the audience have marked C, and I must tell you the answer is correct. C is the right answer. So let me see some more answers as well. Yes, so all of you are right. These are correct answers. So yes, I will, sorry, somehow PowerPoint is not very friendly with me. Yes, so I will contact the processor or person responsible and get it sorted. So I'll not go to the court, I'll not go for out of court settlement or wait for some committee to decide and define for my, let's say, dispute for me. So good, let's move on and quickly look at a few very common causes of disputes. I'm mindful about your time as well. We might run out a little bit, but stay with me. I will make sure that we finish what we are supposed to learn today. So invoicing issues, these are very common. Disputes on delivery and services which are performed. Administrative problems as well, though those can be the reasons, and buyer credit worthiness can be an issue as well, and no effective collections action done. So nobody's following up. Don't expect it to be collected. In some cases, you just get monies when you follow up proactively. So you need to stand up as an organization, as a collections organization, to follow up and proactively chase the invoices. I'll come down to the corrections and control part. And I think that is also very important. The details of causes evaluated by amount of recurrence allowed to launch on an action plan and identify a root cause analysis for that. So it's important to understand what are the causes of those disputes, but it's also very important to understand the frequency. So for example, if there is one root cause, it happened, let's say in last 2 years once, maybe it's less, let's say, requiring your attention on the root cause analysis, other than something that is occurring like every month 10 times, and we need to focus and fix that leakage. So that is very important, to be mindful and clever with your corrective action plans. You choose the right investment of time on the dispute, which help you in bigger turnover as well. It depends on the values as well. So I will leave it to you to decide, but it's very important to be careful with that. With this, I will also identify some of the itemized discrepancies. So it could be differences in prices, differences in quantities, and quality as well. Failure to meet the delivery terms that we agreed with our customer, invalid or missing purchase order numbers, billing errors, and any short pay already made. So it is possible that your customer has already made a payment, but you are not able to allocate it. It's possible you have some duplicate billing, or you have been invoicing multiple times. and you have exhausted the purchase order of your customer, so you will not get the monies, and invalid purchase order numbers as well on the invoices, because your customers will define your invoices only when they see the right purchase order numbers on them, because the purchase order number is the only criteria that is common between you and your customer. The invoice number is your invoice number, so they probably will not care much about your invoice number, but they will care definitely about the purchase order number. So make sure it goes correctly onto your invoices. So if we look at some statistics, you will find mostly we have invoicing issues, then delivery disputes, etc. And the last one is administrative problem. That is very common in some of the cases. So these are some of the common, let's say, results for root causes of errors. I would like to quickly share here one more quote, that instead of expressing conflicts, specific channel could be created to make this conflict explicit, and specific methods could be set up by which the conflict is resolved. So Albert Law, very right. And this reflects back to my first point that I highlighted, that we need to have a very clear strategy, what we really want to achieve when it comes to our disputes. So whether we face them currently or not, we need to be prepared for that with a very, very clear action plan. And if we face them, there is no need to suppress them. There is a need to face them, face your conflicts, face your disputes, and then only you're able to resolve them. So let's move on to how to shorten the cash collection cycle. So one thing is that you invoice promptly. The moment you contractually met your conditions to invoice to your customer or client, do it immediately. Don't wait. Don't wait to club the invoice. Okay, I'll wait for next 1 week and put all the invoices together and submit in one bulk. Don't do that. Immediately create the invoice and submit it to your customer. Contact customer before the due date. This is my tip for you. Do not wait for the due date that it will come and then I will ask the customer to pay me, or I will ask the customer to whether you're going to pay me or not. No, align with your client before that. Hey, where is the invoice? Now where it is. You committed to pay. Is it ready now on due date? Anything that I can do to help and facilitate? Dunning letter. Dunning letters. These are also very important. If needed, don't shy. Submit them to your customer and ask them to pay you. Obtain payment of undisputed amounts. If you are running into disputes with your customer, focus and take care of your clean invoices faster, as quickly as possible. If you give me a choice, I would collect my clean invoices first, and then I go for the dispute, because disputes are there for a reason. But clean invoices must be paid quickly. Visit customer and call them. So if you are somewhere where you can visit your customers yourself, see them. If not, call them and engage with them, build a relationship with them. That's very important. Okay, that is something I don't recommend unless you really, really, really have a situation where you need to issue attorney letters. But in my suggestion, if you're good with your dispute resolution process, you may not reach on a situation where you have to issue this kind of letters. And finally, if you can't manage it and you see it's not working, then turn it over to a collection agent or agency. Automation simplifies invoices, which helps dispute management. So if you don't have a proper workflow, establish it. If you don't have, which will actually help you to lower the cycle times, processing costs will improve, and you will have transparency. So automation will help you. If you don't have it, you must bring it for your organizations to help you with that. One more question I would like to highlight here, and this is the last one, I promise you all. And that question is, can an invoice be paid and then be disputed after that? Or in other words, can a paid invoice be disputed? Now I'm interested in your answers in this one. Okay, dokie. There is a question as well. I'll attend to that. Now I look forward for the answers. Can a paid invoice be disputed? Some answers are yes. There is an answer yes, 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 yes. Okay, most of us are responding yes, that a paid invoice can be disputed. Very good. A, and all. Okay, in a very, very, very specific situation, I'm going to answer now. Thank you very much for your answers. There is one answer as no. Technically, there is only one answer as no, and that is the right answer. A paid invoice cannot be disputed. Now, some of you may come with an argument that I got an invoice paid and then the customer came with a deduction or something. Payment is done. So dispute management is till the time you get the money. You get the money, dispute management is out. So a dispute is only that you are informed and notified that your customer is not going to pay you. So if that is not the case, invoice is paid, then yes, that's not possible. It's technically not possible to dispute a paid invoice. However, in certain circumstances, it is possible that you get a note of deduction later on, but that's not a dispute on a paid invoice. That's a certain situation that is uniquely employed on that specific situation. With this, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you very much for being patient with me as well. I took extra 2 minutes, so thank you very much for that. I will look into the questions and get back to you as soon as I can. I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day, and I would recommend to stay safe and take care of yourself. And I look forward to see you again on one of the forums here. Till then, take care. Ta-da.